Ladies and gentlemen, in relationships, it's easy to fall into the trap of prioritizing someone else's needs over your own, especially when emotions are involved. You may feel that by giving more, sacrificing more, or accommodating more, you're building a stronger connection. But the truth is, the moment you start placing someone else's needs above your own sense of self-worth, you begin to lose the foundation of what makes you uniquely valuable. The essence of who you are, the qualities that drew that person to you in the first place, begins to erode under the weight of imbalance. This is not about being selfish. It's about understanding that in a healthy relationship, self-respect is not optional, it's fundamental. Self-worth is not something others can give you. It is something you cultivate and maintain from within. Yet, in the process of being in a relationship, some women find themselves bending their principles, changing their boundaries, and even silencing their inner voice just to ensure the other person is happy. They may cook his favorite meals, rearrange their schedules to suit his convenience, or even suppress their own desires and dreams to make room for his. While compromises are a natural part of any partnership, there is a clear line between mutual give and take and one-sided sacrifice. When a woman consistently prioritizes her partner's needs over her own, it creates a dynamic that shifts the balance of power in the relationship. Over time, this imbalance not only undermines her confidence, but also encourages the man to take her efforts for granted. The truth is, when you sacrifice your self-worth for someone else, you inadvertently teach them that your value is negotiable. You might think, if I do more, he'll see how much I care, but relationships don't work that way. Respect and love are not won through self-sacrifice. In fact, the more you give up your identity for someone else, the more likely they are to view you as someone who doesn't hold firm boundaries. This isn't because they are inherently unkind or manipulative, but because humans often adapt to the expectations set before them. If you allow yourself to be treated as an option, it becomes easier for others to treat you that way as well. Consider the ripple effects of this dynamic. When you consistently place your partner's needs above your own, it's not just your self-worth that suffers, it's also your mental and emotional well-being. You might begin to feel unappreciated, undervalued, and even invisible. This emotional toll can lead to frustration, resentment, and a sense of losing your identity. Ironically, this very loss of identity, the essence of what made you unique and attractive, can weaken the connection in the relationship itself. The vibrant, confident person he was drawn to begins to fade, replaced by someone who feels depleted and uncertain. This isn't to say that prioritizing someone else's needs is inherently wrong. Love often requires moments of selflessness. But there's a difference between selflessness and self-abandonment. In a healthy relationship, both partners should feel equally seen, heard, and valued. When one person constantly gives while the other takes, it creates an emotional debt that eventually becomes unsustainable. Relationships thrive on reciprocity, not servitude. Another aspect to consider is how prioritizing someone else over yourself affects your long-term goals and aspirations. Women are often conditioned to be caretakers, to nurture and support others, sometimes at the expense of their own ambitions. But giving up on your dreams or delaying your personal growth for the sake of a relationship is a disservice to yourself and the world. Your goals and passions are part of what make you who you are. They're an essential component of your individuality. By sidelining them, you risk not only your own happiness, but also the respect of your partner. A man who truly values you will encourage you to pursue your aspirations, not ask you to abandon them. It's also important to acknowledge the role that fear plays in these dynamics. Fear of conflict, fear of rejection, or fear of being alone can all drive a woman to prioritize someone else's needs over her own. This fear can make you second-guess your worth, leading you to believe that you must overcompensate to keep the relationship intact. But fear-based decisions rarely lead to healthy outcomes. When you operate from a place of fear, you're not truly choosing to prioritize the other person, you're reacting to an internal sense of insecurity. Overcoming this requires a deep understanding of your intrinsic value, independent of anyone else's validation. A relationship built on a foundation of mutual respect doesn't demand that you diminish yourself. Instead, it celebrates your individuality, your strengths, and your needs. When you prioritize your self-worth, you set the tone for how you expect to be treated. This doesn't mean you become rigid or unwilling to compromise. It means you approach the relationship with a sense of balance. You show up as an equal partner, someone who values themselves as much as they value the other person. This balance is key to fostering a partnership that uplifts rather than diminishes. It requires honest communication, clear boundaries, and a willingness to advocate for your own needs. These are not acts of selfishness, they are acts of self-preservation and self-respect. Without them, the relationship risks becoming a space where one person thrives at the expense of the other, rather than a union where both individuals can flourish together. In the pursuit of love and connection, it's easy to overlook the importance of personal ambitions and goals. Many women find themselves caught in the subtle but powerful pull of prioritizing their partner's dreams over their own. This often starts with small compromises, changing plans, deferring opportunities, or even shifting career paths to accommodate a relationship. Over time, however, these small adjustments can snowball into a pattern of self-abandonment, where your goals take a backseat to his. While relationships naturally involve give and take, sacrificing your aspirations entirely for the sake of someone else creates an imbalance that undermines not only your potential but also the long-term health of the relationship itself. A woman's personal goals are not just ambitions, they are a reflection of her identity, passion, and purpose. These goals give her life meaning, fuel her sense of fulfillment, and contribute to her growth as an individual. When you set aside your own dreams to prioritize someone else's, you risk losing a vital part of who you are. Over time, this can lead to feelings of stagnation, regret, and even resentment. It's not uncommon to hear stories of women who, years into a relationship, feel as though they've lost themselves in the process. They may wake up one day realizing that their lives have been shaped entirely around someone else's needs and ambitions, leaving their own aspirations unfulfilled. This pattern often begins with good intentions. You might think, if I support his dreams, he'll support mine, or this is what love is about, putting the other person first. But love doesn't mean sidelining yourself. It means walking side by side, supporting each other's growth equally. When one partner consistently prioritizes the other's ambitions over their own, it creates an imbalance that can become deeply ingrained in the relationship dynamic. The partner whose goals are consistently supported grows and thrives, while the other feels increasingly left behind. Furthermore, neglecting your goals for the sake of a relationship sends an unspoken message to both yourself and your partner. To yourself, it says, my dreams aren't as important, which can chip away at your confidence and sense of self-worth. To your partner, it signals that your aspirations are secondary, setting a precedent that his goals take priority. This dynamic, once established, can be hard to shift. Even if it's not intentional, your partner may begin to expect you to be the one who compromises, who adjusts, who sacrifices. Over time, this can erode the foundation of mutual respect and equality that healthy relationships are built upon. Another critical aspect to consider is the long-term impact of sidelining your ambitions. Personal goals are not just about career or external achievements, they are deeply tied to your sense of purpose and fulfillment. When you neglect them, it's not just your career or hobbies that suffer, it's your entire sense of self. Goals give you a reason to wake up in the morning with enthusiasm and drive. They challenge you, inspire you, and help you grow. Without them, life can feel aimless, even if your relationship seems stable on the surface. It's also worth noting that pursuing your goals doesn't just benefit you, it benefits the relationship as well. A partnership is strongest when both individuals are thriving. When you pursue your dreams and passions, you bring energy, excitement, and fulfillment into the relationship. You inspire your partner to grow and evolve as well, creating a dynamic where both of you are continually striving to become the best versions of yourselves. On the other hand, when one partner suppresses their ambitions, it can create a sense of dependency and stagnation that weighs the relationship down. Fear often plays a significant role in why women neglect their goals for the sake of a relationship. Fear of conflict, fear of seeming unsupportive, or fear of losing the relationship can all drive a woman to put her own dreams on hold. This fear can be deeply. When you share personal details about your life, your struggles, your past relationships, or even your deepest insecurities, you're offering someone a piece of your emotional core. In a loving, respectful relationship, this sharing can foster intimacy and mutual understanding. But in situations where the trust has not yet been fully earned, this openness can backfire. Not everyone values your vulnerability, and not everyone has the integrity to handle your truths with care. Some people may use what you share as leverage to manipulate, to control, or even to hurt you down the line. Therefore, it is vital to exercise discernment in how much you reveal and when. Revealing too much personal information too early in a relationship can also shift the balance of power. Relationships, especially in their early stages, are delicate. Both individuals are still getting to know each other, assessing compatibility and understanding boundaries. When one person becomes overly transparent too quickly, it can create an imbalance where the other person feels they have an advantage. This isn't to suggest that the man will necessarily exploit this imbalance, but it can change the dynamic in subtle ways. He may begin to see you as overly dependent, overly trusting, or even as someone who doesn't protect their own emotional well-being. Furthermore, sharing deeply personal experiences prematurely can create a false sense of intimacy. When you disclose intimate details early on, it may feel like you're building a stronger connection, but in reality, it's often a shortcut that bypasses the natural process of trust building. Genuine intimacy takes time to develop and is built through shared experiences, mutual respect, and consistent actions over time. When you try to accelerate this process by opening up too quickly, you run the risk of creating a relationship that feels deep but lacks the foundation to support it. Another aspect to consider is how revealing too much about your past can affect the way your partner perceives you. While it's important to be honest and transparent about who you are, not every detail of your history needs to be shared immediately. For example, discussing past relationships, mistakes, or personal failures in detail can sometimes overshadow the person you are today. Everyone has a past, but how and when you choose to share it matters. When you focus too heavily on the past, you risk being defined by it in the eyes of your partner. Instead, it's important to share these aspects of your life thoughtfully and in a way that reflects your growth and resilience. There's also the issue of reciprocity. When you open up about your personal life, it's natural to expect the other person to do the same. But not everyone is equally comfortable with vulnerability. And some people may be more guarded or slow to share. If you're the one always opening up and the other person isn't reciprocating, it can create a dynamic where you're emotionally exposed while they remain protected. This lack of balance can lead to feelings of insecurity and frustration over time, especially if you begin to feel that your openness isn't being valued or reciprocated. In some cases, sharing too much can inadvertently push someone away. While vulnerability can be a powerful way to connect, it can also be overwhelming if it's introduced too soon. Relationships thrive on a sense of curiosity and discovery, and part of the excitement of getting to know someone is uncovering their layers over time. When you reveal everything all at once, you remove that sense of mystery and discovery. It's not about being secretive or withholding, but about pacing the relationship in a way that allows trust and intimacy to grow naturally. Another consideration is how sharing personal information affects your sense of control over your narrative. Once you've shared something deeply personal, you can't take it back. The person you shared it with now holds that information, and how they choose to use it is out of your hands. This isn't to say that you should live in fear of being vulnerable, but it underscores the importance of being selective about what you share and with whom. Not everyone deserves access to the most intimate parts of your life. And it's perfectly okay to protect those parts of yourself until you're sure they will be treated with care and respect. Finally, it's important to recognize that protecting your personal life doesn't mean building walls or shutting people out. It's about setting boundaries that allow you to maintain your sense of self while still being open to connection. Boundaries are not about exclusion, they're about creating a safe space where trust can grow. By being intentional about what you share and when, you're not only protecting yourself, but also laying the groundwork for a relationship built on mutual respect and understanding. This balance between openness and discernment is what allows relationships to flourish while preserving your emotional well-being. Respect is a vital pillar in any relationship, but it's a two-way street. While many women strive to respect their partners, it's equally important to ensure that the respect you give is reciprocated. One of the most damaging mistakes a woman can make in a relationship is tolerating disrespectful behavior. Disrespect can manifest in various forms: dismissive comments, lack of consideration for your feelings, condescending attitudes, or even outright mistreatment. The reasons women tolerate such behavior often stem from a desire to keep the peace, fear of losing the relationship, or a belief that they can change the man in question. However, allowing disrespect to persist not only erodes your self-esteem, but also sets a dangerous precedent for how you'll be treated in the long term. Disrespectful behavior often starts subtly. It might be an offhand comment that makes you feel small, a dismissive laugh when you express an opinion, or a tendency to interrupt you during conversations. These moments might seem minor at first, easy to brush aside or rationalize. You might tell yourself he didn't mean it, or it's not a big deal, but over time, these small instances can build up, creating a pattern of disrespect that becomes normalized within the relationship. The danger lies in allowing these behaviors to go unchecked. When you tolerate disrespect, you inadvertently signal to your partner that such behavior is acceptable, which can lead to its escalation. One of the most insidious aspects of tolerating disrespect is the way it chips away at your self-worth. Every time you accept behavior that diminishes you, it sends a message to yourself that you're not worthy of better treatment. This internal narrative can become deeply ingrained, making it even harder to stand up for yourself in the future. Over time, you may start to doubt your own value, questioning whether you deserve respect, love, or consideration. This can create a vicious cycle where your lowered self-esteem makes it even more challenging to address the issue or leave the relationship. It's also important to recognize that disrespect doesn't always come in overtly aggressive forms. Sometimes it's subtle and manipulative, making it harder to identify. A partner might consistently belittle your achievements, dismiss your feelings as overreactions, or make jokes at your expense under the guise of humor. These behaviors might not seem blatantly disrespectful at first glance, but they can have a profound impact on your emotional well-being. They create an environment where you feel devalued, unheard, and unimportant, which is the opposite of what a healthy relationship should provide. Another factor that often leads women to tolerate disrespect is the belief that they can change their partner. You might think, if I'm patient enough, if I love him enough, he'll realize his behavior is wrong and change. While it's natural to hope for improvement, it's important to understand that change must come from within the individual. You cannot force someone to respect you if they don't already have the inclination to do so. Trying to change someone's behavior through patience or sacrifice often leads to frustration, resentment, and further emotional harm. Tolerating disrespect also impacts the dynamic of the relationship itself. When one partner consistently accepts poor treatment, it creates an imbalance of power. The person exhibiting disrespect begins to feel as though they can act without consequence, while the other becomes increasingly submissive. This dynamic is not only unhealthy, but also unsustainable. It breeds resentment on both sides: resentment from the person being disrespected for feeling undervalued, and resentment from the other partner when their behavior is finally called out after being tolerated for so long. Moreover, disrespect in a relationship doesn't just affect the two individuals involved, it can seep into other areas of life. When you're in a relationship where you're not treated with respect, it can impact your confidence in other areas, such as your career, friendships, and personal goals. The emotional toll of being devalued can make it harder to pursue opportunities, assert yourself in professional settings, or maintain healthy relationships outside of the romantic one. In this way, tolerating disrespect has far-reaching consequences that extend beyond the immediate dynamics of the partnership. It's essential to recognize the red flags of disrespect early on and address them head-on. This doesn't mean reacting with anger or defensiveness, but rather setting clear boundaries and communicating your expectations. Boundaries are not about controlling the other person, they're about protecting your own sense of self and ensuring that the relationship is built on mutual respect. When you articulate your boundaries clearly and consistently, you set the tone for how you expect to be treated. If your partner values the relationship, they will respect those boundaries and make an effort to meet them. If not, it's a clear sign that the relationship may not be worth continuing. It's also worth reflecting on why you might be tolerating disrespect in the first place. Are there underlying fears or insecurities that make it difficult to stand up for yourself? Are you worried about being alone or about losing the relationship? Understanding the root cause of your tolerance can help you address it more effectively. Sometimes the fear of confrontation or the hope that things will improve can prevent. When a woman overcommits too early, she often finds herself sacrificing her own needs, desires, and boundaries in an effort to please or support her partner. This might look like always being available when he calls, rearranging your schedule to accommodate his needs, or going above and beyond to ensure his happiness without receiving the same level of effort in return. While these actions may come from a place of love and devotion, they can unintentionally set a precedent where your time, energy, and emotional labor are taken for granted. Over time, this imbalance can lead to feelings of frustration, exhaustion, and even resentment as you realize that your efforts are not being matched. One of the risks of overcommitting is that it can create a false sense of security in the relationship. When you invest heavily in someone before they've shown equal commitment, you may feel that your actions are solidifying the bond between you. However, this can lead to a situation where the relationship feels one-sided, with you doing most of the work to maintain and nurture the connection. This dynamic can be emotionally draining and may leave you questioning your partner's true intentions or feelings. Overcommitting can also affect the way your partner perceives and values you. People tend to appreciate what they have to work for, and when everything is given too freely or too soon, it can diminish the perceived value of your efforts. This isn't about playing games or withholding affection, but rather about maintaining a sense of balance and ensuring that both partners are contributing equally to the relationship. When one person consistently gives more than the other, it can create an environment where the less invested partner becomes complacent, expecting their needs to be met without putting in equivalent effort. Another important consideration is how overcommitting can impact your own sense of identity and independence. When you pour all of your time and energy into a relationship, it can be easy to lose sight of your own goals, interests, and priorities. You might find yourself neglecting friendships, hobbies, or career aspirations in an effort to be everything your partner needs. While compromise and support are essential aspects of any relationship, it's equally important to maintain a sense of self outside of the partnership. Overcommitting can lead to a loss of individuality, which can ultimately make the relationship feel suffocating for both parties. It's also worth noting that overcommitting too early can place undue pressure on the relationship. When one person is excessively invested, it can create expectations that the other partner may not be ready or willing to meet. This can lead to feelings of guilt or resentment on their part, as well as disappointment and hurt on yours. Relationships need time to grow and develop naturally, and overcommitting can disrupt this process by forcing a level of intensity or seriousness that may not align with where both partners are emotionally. Another consequence of overcommitting is the risk of becoming overly dependent on the relationship for your sense of happiness and fulfillment. When you invest so heavily in one person, it can create a dynamic where your emotional well-being becomes tied to their actions, words, and presence. This dependency can make it difficult to maintain a healthy balance in the relationship, as your partner may feel overwhelmed by the weight of your expectations. Additionally, it can leave you vulnerable to emotional pain if the relationship doesn't progress as you hoped. Overcommitting can also make it harder to recognize red flags or assess the true compatibility of the relationship. When you're deeply invested, it's easy to overlook or rationalize behaviors that might otherwise be cause for concern. You may find yourself ignoring signs that your partner isn't as invested or compatible as you are, simply because you've already put so much effort into the relationship. This can lead to a situation where you stay in a relationship that isn't serving your needs, simply because you feel too invested to walk away. A healthy relationship is built on mutual respect, effort, and commitment. Both partners should feel equally valued and invested in the connection, with neither person carrying the weight of the relationship alone. This balance creates a sense of partnership and equality that allows both individuals to thrive, both within the relationship and as individuals. Overcommitting disrupts this balance and can create a dynamic where one person feels taken advantage of while the other feels pressured or unmotivated to contribute equally. It's important to approach relationships with a sense of self-awareness and intention, being mindful of how much you're giving and whether it's being reciprocated. This doesn't mean withholding love or affection, but rather ensuring that your efforts are met with equal enthusiasm and commitment from your partner. By maintaining a sense of balance and mutual effort, you can build a relationship that is not only fulfilling but also sustainable in the long term. Recognizing the value of your own time, energy, and emotional labor is key to fostering a partnership that is rooted in mutual respect and appreciation. Being overly reliant on a man for emotional validation is one of the most dangerous traps a woman can fall into within a relationship. It is essential to understand that while a relationship should provide support, comfort, and love, it should not be the sole source of your sense of self-worth. When a woman places all her emotional needs in the hands of her partner, she risks becoming dependent on his approval, attention, and affection to feel valuable. This emotional dependence can severely limit her personal growth, cause unnecessary strain on the relationship, and lead to a diminished sense of self. The primary issue with relying too heavily on a partner for validation is that it compromises your autonomy. Your happiness, confidence, and self-esteem should not hinge on someone else's actions or opinions. While it's natural to seek support and affirmation from those we love, it's important that this doesn't become the only source of affirmation. The danger arises when you find that your entire emotional state, how you feel about yourself, your worth, and your place in the world becomes contingent upon how your partner treats you. If the relationship goes through a rough patch, or if your partner is distracted or emotionally unavailable, your sense of self can be deeply shaken, leaving you feeling lost, insecure, or unimportant. When a woman becomes overly reliant on a man for validation, she often loses touch with her own identity. She may begin to define herself based on how she is perceived by her partner or the relationship itself. Over time, this can erode her self-confidence and lead to feelings of inadequacy. This reliance often results in a cycle where the woman constantly seeks reassurance or approval, only to feel unfulfilled or rejected when this validation is not forthcoming. The more you seek validation externally, the less you cultivate the inner strength needed to rely on yourself for self-worth. One significant consequence of seeking external validation is that it often leads to a pattern of people-pleasing. The woman may feel compelled to put her partner's needs and desires before her own in an effort to gain approval. This can manifest in various ways, from constantly agreeing with her partner to suppressing her own feelings or desires in an attempt to maintain peace or avoid conflict. While compromise and selflessness are essential in a healthy relationship, when they become one-sided, the woman ends up neglecting her own needs in favor of constantly catering to her partner's. This imbalance often leaves her feeling exhausted, resentful, and unappreciated, which only further feeds the cycle of seeking external validation. In relationships where one partner seeks excessive validation, it also puts unnecessary pressure on the other. No one can be everything to their partner. Expecting one person to be the sole source of validation can create a burden on the relationship. It places an unrealistic demand on the partner to constantly provide emotional support, approval, and reassurance, which can lead to frustration and burnout. As a result, the relationship can become one-sided, with one person feeling overwhelmed by the pressure to constantly provide validation, while the other becomes more and more dependent on this external source for her sense of self-worth. Additionally, when a woman's emotional well-being is contingent upon her partner's actions, it diminishes her ability to deal with challenges or disagreements in the relationship constructively. Instead of addressing the issue at hand, the woman may focus on how the situation affects her emotionally and how she can regain her partner's approval. This makes it difficult to resolve conflicts in a healthy and productive way, as the underlying issue becomes clouded by feelings of insecurity or fear of rejection. In a healthy relationship, both partners should feel secure enough to voice their concerns and work through disagreements without fearing that it will affect their emotional worth or the future of the relationship. Another key issue with emotional dependency is that it prevents personal growth and self-improvement. When a woman is constantly seeking external validation, she may fail to focus on her own goals, dreams, and aspirations. Her world becomes centered around the relationship, and she may put aside her own ambitions to meet the perceived expectations of her partner. Over time, this can lead to a loss of purpose and a diminished sense of accomplishment. A woman who does not cultivate her own sense of worth and achievement outside of the relationship may find herself feeling unfulfilled, even if the relationship is going well. Her self-esteem is tied not to her personal growth, but to the fluctuating dynamics of the partnership. It's also important to note that emotional validation from a partner should never replace the validation that comes from within. Self-validation is the cornerstone of self-love and self-respect. It is essential for a woman to learn how to validate herself, to acknowledge her. Relying solely on a partner for emotional validation also contributes to an unhealthy attachment style. Women who lack emotional independence often develop anxious attachment patterns where they constantly seek closeness and reassurance, fearing abandonment or rejection. This can lead to behaviors such as excessive texting, constant checking in, or even clinginess. These behaviors rooted in insecurity can suffocate the relationship and drive the partner away, further exacerbating the cycle of emotional dependency. In conclusion, emotional reliance on a man for validation creates a fragile foundation for both the individual and the relationship. It compromises a woman's self-worth, leads to people-pleasing tendencies, and creates an unhealthy imbalance in the relationship. The key to maintaining emotional health in a relationship is self-validation, learning to love, respect, and appreciate yourself without needing constant confirmation from others. This inner strength will not only enhance your sense of fulfillment, but will also enable you to enter into relationships from a place of balance and mutual respect, rather than emotional dependence. When a woman constantly compromises her own values, beliefs, and desires to please a man, she risks losing touch with her true self. This behavior, often driven by the desire to keep the peace or to avoid conflict, can lead to feelings of resentment, self-doubt, and ultimately a loss of self-respect. Relationships are built on mutual understanding, respect, and a shared vision of what both partners want in life. When one partner consistently bends to the will of the other, it creates an imbalance in the relationship. And over time, this can lead to deep emotional dissatisfaction for both parties. It is essential for a woman to stand firm in her beliefs and values, even when in a relationship. Compromising doesn't mean completely abandoning one's principles or desires just to accommodate a partner. Instead, compromise should be about finding middle ground where both partners are heard, understood, and respected. However, constantly sacrificing your own values to please someone else is not a healthy form of compromise. It's self-sabotage. It can leave you feeling as though you are walking on eggshells, constantly trying to predict what your partner will want or need next, and this is not only exhausting but also unsustainable. One of the most significant risks of constantly compromising yourself in the name of a relationship is that it can cause you to lose sight of your own identity. When you place the needs and desires of your partner above your own to the extent that you ignore your own beliefs, it creates a distorted sense of who you are. It's easy to get caught in a pattern of self-neglect where you only validate yourself through the approval of your partner. This kind of self-sacrifice may feel noble at first, but it often leads to feelings of frustration, anxiety, and resentment as you realize that you have neglected your own wants and needs for too long. Moreover, the longer you compromise yourself for someone else, the more difficult it becomes to recognize when your values are being undermined. You may start to tolerate behaviors that you would never have accepted in the past simply because you've conditioned yourself to suppress your own voice. This can lead to a situation where you become increasingly unhappy or uncomfortable, but you feel unable to speak up or assert your own needs because you've been in the habit of ignoring them for so long. Over time, this emotional repression can manifest in feelings of bitterness and dissatisfaction with the relationship, which can result in emotional burnout or even depression. The need to always please your partner at the expense of your own values can also have a negative impact on your emotional well-being. When you compromise too much, you end up giving so much of yourself that there is nothing left for you. This can lead to a sense of depletion, where you feel as though you are constantly pouring from an empty cup. A healthy relationship is one in which both partners contribute to each other's happiness and growth, not one where one partner is expected to sacrifice themselves for the other. By always putting yourself last, you risk feeling invisible, unimportant, and even unworthy of love and care. In a relationship, mutual respect and understanding are essential, and one of the most important aspects of respect is honoring each other's beliefs and desires. When a woman continually compromises her values, she sends the message that her opinions and desires are not as important as those of her partner. This can create an unhealthy dynamic where the woman feels subservient or insignificant, and the partner may begin to take her for granted. This can be emotionally damaging and can erode the trust and affection that once defined the relationship. Additionally, constantly compromising to please your partner can result in a loss of personal power. Your sense of self-worth and independence are diminished when you make constant sacrifices without considering your own desires. Over time, this loss of autonomy can leave you feeling trapped in a relationship where you feel as though you cannot be your true self. When a woman is unable to express her opinions, assert her needs, or stand by her beliefs in the relationship, she becomes more vulnerable to manipulation and control. In this environment, it becomes difficult to foster a healthy, balanced connection based on mutual understanding and shared values. The long-term impact of this kind of behavior can be detrimental not only to the woman's emotional health, but also to the relationship itself. Constantly compromising oneself for the sake of the other partner sets a dangerous precedent. It establishes an unequal power dynamic in which one partner's desires always take precedence over the others. Over time, this can breed resentment and frustration, both of which are toxic to a relationship. While compromise is a necessary part of any partnership, sacrificing your core values, beliefs, and desires in the name of pleasing someone else is not a sustainable or healthy way to maintain the connection. In some cases, the repeated self-sacrifice might lead to feelings of guilt or shame. A woman who constantly gives in to her partner's wishes may start to feel as though she is not good enough or worthy of standing up for her own needs. These feelings of inadequacy can create a negative self-image and further contribute to a sense of emotional disconnection from both herself and her partner. This emotional depletion can, in turn, create a cycle where the woman feels even more compelled to sacrifice herself in a desperate attempt to find validation or approval. It's important to remember that in a healthy relationship, both partners should feel empowered to express their thoughts and feelings openly without fear of judgment or rejection. If a woman is always compromising herself, she is not creating an environment where both partners can thrive. Instead, she is fostering an environment of imbalance where her voice is silenced and her needs are unmet. The key to a fulfilling relationship is not about one person constantly sacrificing themselves for the other, but about both partners being able to express themselves freely without fear of being diminished or disregarded. Ultimately, the foundation of any successful partnership is respect and understanding. Each partner should feel valued, heard, and appreciated for who they are. By compromising your core beliefs and desires, you risk diminishing your own sense of self-worth and undermining the very foundation of the relationship. A healthy relationship is one in which both partners respect and honor each other's values, working together to create a space where both individuals can grow and thrive. Compromise should never come at the cost of one's identity or self-respect. Only when both partners can be true to themselves and each other can a relationship reach its fullest potential. It is essential for a woman to recognize her worth and not depend on a man's validation to define her self-esteem. When a woman constantly seeks external validation, particularly from a partner, it leads to a dangerous cycle of self-doubt and insecurity. The issue is not that validation is inherently bad, but that relying solely on someone else's approval to feel good about yourself is unsustainable. The need for constant reassurance creates an emotional dependency that can undermine the foundation of personal growth, independence, and true self-love. We live in a world where society often defines women by their relationships, their beauty, or their ability to please others. This societal conditioning can create the illusion that a woman's value is tied to external factors, particularly her ability to attract and keep a man's attention. Many women, consciously or unconsciously, begin to internalize these beliefs, leading them to base their sense of self-worth on the approval of the men in their lives. This mindset is dangerous as it places one's happiness and self-esteem in someone else's hands. The problem arises when a woman starts to feel as though her value is directly correlated to how much a man praises her or how much attention he gives her. This dependence on external validation can manifest in many ways. It may lead a woman to constantly seek compliments, approval, or affirmation from her partner, no matter how minor the situation might be. She may become obsessed with the idea of being validated, and when that validation is absent, she can feel rejected, unseen, or unimportant. This constant seeking of approval can create an emotional roller coaster where one moment she feels good about herself due to her partner's praise, and the next she feels worthless when that validation is not forthcoming. Moreover, this dependence on validation can create an unhealthy attachment to the person providing it. The woman may begin to believe that without her partner's constant approval, she is nothing. The emotional toll of seeking validation from a partner can also create a power imbalance in the relationship. When one person is constantly seeking validation from the other, it shifts the power dynamic. The partner who is providing the validation may begin to feel burdened by the constant emotional neediness, which can lead to resentment or frustration. They may feel as though they are constantly walking on eggshells, having to offer reassurance and praise at every turn. Over time, this can lead to an unhealthy dependency where the woman feels powerless to stand on her own, and the relationship may begin to feel more like an emotional caretaker dynamic than a partnership between equals. Another consequence of seeking validation from a partner is that it can create a sense of emotional instability. When a woman's happiness and self-worth are contingent on someone else's approval, she becomes vulnerable to emotional upheaval. If her partner's opinion shifts, if they become distant, or if they withhold praise or affection, she may experience intense emotional distress. This emotional volatility can create a cycle of insecurity, where the woman's sense of self fluctuates wildly based on the behavior of her partner. Instead of building a stable sense of confidence from within, she allows her emotional well-being to be dictated by the whims of the person she is in a relationship with. This pattern of emotional dependency can also prevent a woman from truly embracing her own personal growth and development. When she places her value in the hands of someone else, she is less likely to explore her own interests, pursue her passions, or focus on her goals. Instead of investing time and energy into cultivating her own talents, career, and aspirations, she may find herself consumed with trying to meet her partner's needs and expectations. This may cause her to neglect the very things that contribute to her happiness and fulfillment. In the long run, it leaves her feeling unfulfilled, and she might even lose her sense of direction in life, as her worth is measured by her relationship status rather than her individual achievements. The desire for external validation also undermines a woman's ability to trust her instincts and judgment. When validation is the key to feeling good about herself, she may start to doubt her decisions and choices unless they are approved by her partner. This reliance on someone else's opinion can erode her confidence in her own abilities. Over time, she may become paralyzed by self-doubt, unable to make decisions without first seeking approval from others. This lack of self-trust can prevent her from achieving her full potential, both in her personal and professional life.